Some cars don't just move people, they move time itself. And for many Americans, the Pontiac Bonneville was one of those cars. A long, low, confident highway cruiser that carried families, dreams, and the promise of open roads. Today, its story is fading. But for a generation who remembers its deep rumble and wide-shouldered presence, the Bonneville still lives in the quiet corners of memory. The story begins in a very different America, a time when the country trusted the future, when a car wasn't just transportation, but a celebration of freedom. In the years after the war, American highways stretched farther. Families traveled more, and automakers wanted to build cars that made people feel proud when they pulled into a driveway. Pontiac, once known mostly for dependable family cars, wanted something bold, something that felt like the wind itself. The name Bonneville first appeared in the 1950s, inspired by the famous high-speed runs on the salt flats. Even people who had never been there knew the name. It sounded fast, it sounded fearless, and when Pontiac rolled out the first real Bonneville for the public, it didn't disappoint. Long chrome spears, wide bench seats, and an engine that made the heart beat a little faster. To Americans of the late 50s and early 60s, the Bonneville wasn't just a car, it was a statement. You didn't whisper into a Bonneville, you settled into it, and the road opened in front of you. Families remember those long summer trips, the slow rise of the morning sun through the windshield. Kids stretched out in the back seat, fighting sleep as the steady hum of the engine carried them down the highway. The Bonneville felt like a moving living room, steady and calm, with enough space for luggage, a cooler, and whatever toys the kids insisted on bringing. For many, the first time they ever left their hometown for a real vacation was in a Bonneville. Through the 1960s, Pontiac grew confident, and the Bonneville grew too. Its lines became cleaner, its body wider, its presence stronger. Drivers loved the smooth ride. It floated without feeling soft. It handled without feeling harsh. For an entire generation, it became the face of American full-size comfort, without the price tag of the very top luxury brands. Then came the 70s, and the country began to change. Gas prices rose, rules tightened, engines shrank, but the Bonneville kept its spirit. Even with new shapes and new expectations, it remained a comfortable, trustworthy companion on the road. People who grew up in the 70s remember leaning their heads against cool window glass, watching farmland roll by, as the big Pontiac carried them toward a new season of life. Then came the 80s and 90s, when American cars shifted toward smaller designs and new technologies. Pontiac kept the Bonneville alive by giving it a new purpose. It became sleeker, more modern, and surprisingly quick. Drivers who owned the sportier versions still smile when they think about the sudden pull of the accelerator on an empty stretch of road. It was a different Bonneville, but it was still a Bonneville. Still dependable, still proud, still ready for anything. Across these decades, the car saw America change. Towns grew, families moved, highways expanded, and the world sped up. But the Bonneville always kept that calm, reassuring identity. It was the big car that didn't brag, the quiet workhorse that slipped through daily life without demanding attention. And maybe that's why people loved it so much. Of course, nothing lasts forever. As the new century approached, tastes shifted again. Drivers wanted SUVs and smaller sedans. Pontiac itself struggled to find its place in a market that no longer valued its old strengths. And in 2005, after nearly half a century of stories, memories, and miles, the Bonneville name took its final bow. For many, that ending felt abrupt. A familiar piece of American life just vanished. Dealerships cleared out the last models. Enthusiasts shook their heads, remembering a time when the sight of a Bonneville meant weekend plans, family trips, and the thrill of a powerful V8 that seemed ready for anything. Today, the Bonneville has become a ghost of the road, rarely seen, quietly recalled and often forgotten by younger drivers. But for those who lived through its best years, the memories are still vivid. They remember the weight of the door when it closed with a deep, satisfying thump, They remember tuning the radio and hearing the warm glow of music through big, simple speakers. They remember the soft bounce of the suspension as the car settled after hitting a bump. They remember the joy of sitting behind the wheel, looking out over a long hood that pointed confidently toward the horizon. Most of all, they remember how the Bonneville made them feel. Safe, hopeful, capable, young. Every generation has its machines, symbols of a moment in time. For some, it was a pickup truck. For others, a muscle car. But the Bonneville was something special. It wasn't wild or loud or rebellious. It was steady. It was dependable. It was the car you trusted to take your family anywhere. And maybe that's why the story of the Bonneville matters. Because in remembering it, we remember a part of ourselves. We remember an America of long weekends, full-service gas stations, and friendly waves from strangers at rest stops. We remember a time when life felt slower, and roads felt endless. Even though the Bonneville is gone, its legacy rolls on. You can still find them, parked in small-town yards, stored in barns, or lovingly restored by people who refuse to let a good story fade. These cars hold decades of laughter, arguments, music, and quiet moments shared between families. They hold the voices of parents and grandparents who once sat behind their wheels, voices that remind us where we came from. The Bonneville may no longer cruise the highways in big numbers, but in the hearts of those who grew up with it, it still lives. It still rumbles. It still shines. Because some cars are more than metal. Some cars are memories. Some cars are chapters of American life that deserve to be told again. And the Pontiac Bonneville is one of those stories. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, consider subscribing for more forgotten stories from America's automotive past. Your support keeps these memories alive.